Hey, welcome. Today we're diving into one of the most amazing and, let's be honest, intricate systems in the human body, the female reproductive system. We're going to break down how all the different parts, the anatomy, are perfectly built to do their jobs. So let's jump right in. So, what's its main purpose? You can really boil it down to four key jobs. First, it has to produce eggs, which are called ova. Second, it needs to make fertilization possible. Third, it's designed to nourish a developing fetus all the way to birth. And finally, it produces all the essential hormones that basically run the whole show. Pretty much every single part we're about to talk about plays a role in one of these four things. Okay, to make sense of all the parts, it's super helpful to think of them in two main groups, almost like two teams. First up, you've got the primary organs. The technical term is gonads, and in this case, that means the ovaries. You can think of them as the main production factories. They make the eggs, and they pump out the hormones. Then you have the second team, the accessory organs. This includes things like the fallopian tubes and the uterus. Their job is to be the support crew. They create the pathways and the perfect environment for everything else to happen. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with a quick system overview. Then we'll zoom in on the ovaries, the source of life. After that, we'll trace the pathway for potential, look at the hormones that act as the system's conductors, and finally wrap it all up with the cycle of life. First up, let's talk about the absolute stars of the show, the ovaries. And, it's easy to think of them as just holding eggs, but they are so much more than that. They're these incredible dual-function powerhouses that really drive the entire system. And take a look at this. This image is a fantastic cross-section that shows us what's happening inside the ovary. It's like a snapshot of the whole process. See these little guys? Those are the primordial follicles, basically immature eggs just waiting for their turn. You can see them developing into a bigger, mature follicle that's getting ready to release an egg. And over here, that's the corpus luteum. That's what's left behind after the egg is released. It's amazing, right? This one picture shows you the whole life cycle in there. So this all comes down to the two main jobs of the ovaries. The first one is called oogenesis. That's the fancy term for the whole process of creating and releasing a mature egg. That's its exocrine function. But it also has a completely different job. Its endocrine function, which is to produce and secrete hormones, like estrogen and progesterone. Those are the chemical messengers that control everything. Okay, so once an egg is released from the ovary, a process called ovulation, it doesn't just sit there. It sets off on this incredible journey. So let's follow its path and see where it goes. This journey really has two main stops. The first stop is the fallopian tube. Now, this is a super important location because this is usually where fertilization happens, if it's going to. And get this. The tube is lined with these tiny little hairs called cilia, and they literally sweep the egg along toward the uterus. The second stop, of course, is the uterus itself. This is a really powerful, pear-shaped muscular organ. And its inner lining, the endometrium, is just amazing. It's constantly changing, thickening up every month to prepare this soft, welcoming bed just in case a fertilized egg arrives and needs a place to implant. All right, we've kind of been dropping the word hormones here and there, but now it's time to give them their own spotlight. Because honestly, they're the conductors of this whole biological orchestra. They're the ones telling every single organ what to do and when to do it with perfect timing. So this table lays out our four main players. And what's really interesting is where they come from. You've got FSH and LH, and they're actually sent out from the pituitary gland, way up in the brain. So the brain sends FSH, that's follicle-stimulating hormone, down to the ovaries and tells the follicles to start growing. As those follicles get bigger, they start pumping out estrogen. Estrogen's job is to tell the uterus, hey, start building up that lining. Then, bam, you get this big surge of LH, or luteinizing hormone, also from the brain. That's the trigger that causes the egg to be released. That's ovulation. And finally, that little structure left behind in the ovary, the corpus luteum, starts making progesterone, which gets the uterus all ready for a potential pregnancy. See how it's all connected? It's this incredible chain of command. Okay, so now it's time to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. We've talked about the organs, we've talked about the hormones. Well, none of this happens randomly. It all follows this incredibly precise and predictable rhythm that we call the menstrual cycle. This timeline really maps out the whole 28-day story beautifully. Let's walk through it. We start at day 1 with the menstrual flow. This is when the body sheds the uterine lining from the last cycle. But what's amazing is that even as that's happening, FSH levels are already starting to creep up, getting the next batch of follicles ready to go. That brings us to the next phase, the proliferative phase. Here, estrogen is on the rise, rebuilding that uterine lining while the follicles in the ovary are growing. Then, right around the halfway mark, day 14, we get that massive LH surge, which triggers ovulation. The egg is released. After that, we enter the secretory phase. The corpus luteum is now making progesterone, which makes the uterus super receptive to a fertilized egg. But if no pregnancy happens, the hormone levels drop, the lining breaks down, and guess what? We're back at day 1, and the whole amazing cycle starts all over again.
You know, this quote from one of the sources we looked at just sums it up perfectly. The adult ovary goes through a recurrent cyclical process. The key words there are recurrent and cyclical. This isn't just something that happens once. It's a rhythm, a constant loop that repeats month after month, all powered by that beautiful dance between the anatomy and the hormones we've been talking about.
So that leaves us with this one big question to think about. We've looked at all the individual pieces, the organs, the hormones, the timing, but when you just step back for a second and look at the whole picture, it's just this system of mind-blowing complexity with every part working in perfect harmony. So how? How does this incredible balance of all these different elements pull off one of the most complex and fundamental feats in all of biology, the creation of new life? It's just